These are the second part of the notes for dilation and similarity. In this part, we are going to find the center of dilation, and then we're going to do some dilation by construction. So for the center of dilation, we need to find where it is that I started in order to perform my dilation. We know that where I started, that point has to create a line that goes through my pre-image and image points. So I can do it for the third one. However, you should be aware that you only need two lines intersecting because you're looking for the intersection point. So right here, we'll label this N, and we will say N is the center of dilation. The second task we're going to do is to dilate by construction. So the first thing I need to do is I need to know where I should end up, where E prime and A prime and C prime and D prime and B prime will be. If you remember up here when we found the center, we can see that C prime is on the line NC. So I need to have my lines that go from my center through my pre-image points. Now, in this case, I am doing a ratio of 1/2, which means that, similar to the picture above, when it gets smaller, it actually ends up, the figure ends up between the center of dilation and the pre-image. So I know that my center and my pre-image, that my image is going to end up somewhere in here. Now, I have to remember how to cut something in half. With a compass, the way I cut something in half is to find the perpendicular bisector. The bisector is the important part of that, but the construction does both. So you'll remember that in order to find the perpendicular bisector, what I'm really doing is I am finding, I'm kind of creating a rhombus. So because one side of my construction every single time is going to be from C, I am going to make a big dark arc that goes all the way around. That will allow me to not have to continue to make arcs from C. And so now I can just go to the A, B, C, D, E and make marks there. So from E, I make a mark to the right, to the left, where these two arcs intersect and these two arcs intersect. That is the line that will cut E to the center in half. So now I'm going to connect those two lines. I'm going to do this in red pen so that it has a slightly different color, a little clearer to see. And now what this has done is that the red line and this line are perpendicular to each other, so I could put a 90 degree. But the more important piece is it cut the line E to the center in half, which means I now am halfway closer to the center than I was when I was at E. I'm now going to do that same process for D. Remember, I've made the big arc already for the center, so I only need to continue to go from the pre-image points. And in order to make sure I don't lose what I'm connecting, I need to actually place a little dot where the two arcs intersect on the top and the bottom. That way, when I place my ruler, I'm sure of where which arcs I'm looking at. So I connect those two intersecting arcs. And I now look at the line D to the center, and that's where my D prime is going to be. I'll do the same thing for A, B, and C. I'll do A first. There's the new arc I want. And there's the new arc I want. Connect both of those. And where that red line intersects with the line A, C is where my A prime is going to be. Let's get a little messy in here with all these lines. Now I'm going to do C and make an arc above. And now we can see there are many arcs being made up here. So this is why putting a little point where the two arcs that I'm paying attention to currently intersect is so important. So then I very clearly can see which 2 points I am connecting to make my perpendicular bisector. And so now I am looking at this line that goes through C, and so this right here is C prime. And last but not least, I will do B. Dot. My dot. In this case, the dot actually goes through one of the other points. So I'm going to keep my eye on that one very carefully so that I don't lose it and lose sight of it. And now right here is where B prime is. Now I have to connect these. So A to B, B to C, D to C, D to E, and A to E. So obviously doing this with pencil and using a pen to highlight some of the pieces is going to make this a lot clearer. It is definitely a bit messy when we're doing so many arcs. We're going to do a second construction, this time with a ratio of 3. So before, when I made my dilation lines, I didn't have to make them very long because I was shrinking. I was going in between. I'm now making it bigger, so it's going to end up out here, which means I need these dilation lines to be pretty long. Now in this case, I'm not shrinking, I'm getting bigger, so I don't have to cut anything in half. So this construction you may find to be a little bit easier. I use my compass to measure the distance between my center and D, and my ratio is 3, so I do 1, 2, 3, and that is where D prime ends up. I measure the distance between the center and C. 1, 2, 3. So this is where C prime ends up. Now to B. 1, 2, 3. That is where B prime ends up. And lastly, A. So center to A. Pencil a little bit here. 1, 2, 3. And so this is where A prime ends up. And my last job here is to connect the points to get the shape. So C prime to B prime, D prime to C prime, B prime to A prime, and A prime to D prime. I now have a shape that is 3 times larger than my pre-image ABCD.